One key thing that not a lot of students pay attention to in the pre-production process is a few tech basics about how video is captured. These are important to know because if you get them wrong, there's not much you can do after the fact to make it look any better. In general, there are 3 technical specifications that you need to know about: aspect ratio, resolution, and frames per second. Aspect ratio is just the ratio of how wide the frame of film is to how tall it is. So back in the day, think old TVs, the aspect ratio is 4:3. However, nowadays things are wider at 16:9. This is the standard sort of widescreen TV aspect ratio. Netflix shoots many of its shows in 2:1, and many films are shot in 2.35:1. Aspect ratios generally go from the top to bottom here, from things that look like TV, specifically old TV, up through things that look like film. Generally, the wider something is, the more filmic it looks, and sort of the more epic it looks. Aspect ratio can also tell a lot about a video. For example, in Finesse by Bruno Mars, they use the aspect ratio to bring the audience into the 1990s, where all the music videos were filmed in a 4:3 aspect ratio. The second part is resolution. It's how many pixels across and how many pixels up and down something is. Generally, you'll always want to shoot things in at least FHD, full HD. And I'd recommend that over 4K, as 4K can be a little bit difficult to edit after the fact. What a pixel is if you zoom in on a screen, you will see little groups of little blocks of light that have a red, a green, and a blue segment to them. Those blocks of light are called pixels, that each grouping of red, green, and blue. So a full HD video is going to be 1920 pixels across and 1080 pixels tall. The last thing is frames per second, and usually you don't have to worry about this at all. Really, the only time you would need to worry about this is if you ever want to do slow motion and want it to look very smooth. Generally, people shoot at 24 or 30 frames per second. For slow motion, however, you would want to shoot at a much higher rate, 60 to 240 frames per second, for example. Frames per second is how many frames are played back per second. Now, for video, a video is actually just a bunch of still images that are played back quickly. Normally, things are filmed at, again, 24 or 30 frames per second, as we have here. When we slow it way down to 6 frames per second, as we see here, it no longer looks like smooth motion. It now looks just like a series of still images that are being played back to us. In general, these standard settings, which you can often find in your phone's camera app or in iOS camera settings, are perfect. 1080p 30, or if you find something that says FHD. What that means is it's going to be a full HD 1920 by 1080 picture using a 16:9 aspect ratio. The P stands for progressive scan. If you ever see something with I, don't use it. I means interlaced. Always use P. And 30 means 30 frames per second, which will be great for your projects. You can adjust these on Android in the camera app settings, as I mentioned, and on iOS, you have to go to the general settings and then find camera. If you ever need help on getting a handle on how the technical basics are going to impact your video project, you can always schedule a consultation in the Digital Act Studio. Happy filming.